we are here with Berry Women's Aid, who will be discussing how they support victims and their families of domestic violence. I will now pass you over to Rachel Cox.
Thank you. Just to introduce myself, my name is Rachel Cox. I'm the Outreach Centre Manager for Women's Aid in Bury St Edmunds. For those that you are not familiar with Women's Aid, we're a charity and we provide refuge service within Bury St Edmunds for those women and children who are fleeing domestic abuse. But also we provide outreach to the local community as well. Although we talk about victims as being predominantly female, the statistics show that 85% of victims are female. That doesn't mean to say that we don't support men, because we do, and we also support same-sex couples and various young people throughout stages of relationships. So basically, anybody that's perceived to be a victim of domestic abuse, we can support and offer a service to. I think it's really important to start with to look at what domestic abuse is. I do have a PowerPoint which I can send across for anybody else that's interested with all this kind of information on anyhow. But just a brief overview of what domestic abuse actually is defined as by the Home Office is an incident or pattern of instance of controlling, coercive or threatening behaviour. Violence or abuse between age 16 or over couples who have been in an intimate relationship or are family members. These are repeated patterns of behaviour as well. The definition itself kind of lays out what kind of abuse is, such as psychological, emotional, physical, sexual, financial. However, we know that actually there's a lot more kind of tactics of abuse that are used to gain power and control over another person. So whilst we know about the physical, a lot of people identify domestic abuse as physical abuse, there's way more emotional and verbal and other things used in order to control a partner. So at the moment we're dealing with an awful lot of digital abuse, with everything going online and smartphones getting smarter, technology available wherever. There's a lot of victims that are reporting that they are being hacked, having text messages, emails looked at, but also being tracked. You can buy trackers online very cheap, and they are actually being put in handbags and things like that to find and monitor where people are going. It also encompasses things like cheating, telling you what to wear, not telling you what to do, but basically making you believe that you haven't got a choice. So it's taking away your individual choice and repeatedly doing so, so you don't have a voice and you fail to be able to function in everyday life, because actually somebody's controlling what you do. As I said, we work with predominantly women and children. However, we do work with male victims, same-sex couples and young people in various different settings. We have a team programme running, so we run the Escape the Trap, which is about breaking the cycle of unhealthy relationships, and we do one-to-one work and group work in the community in relation to healthy relationships, something which we like to go into schools and colleges to promote, because actually we know that sometimes when you've grown up in households where there have been family members that have been arguing and fighting, and it doesn't feel a very safe place, that actually some of our children are growing up in households where there is a high risk of domestic abuse. In fact, statistics tell us there's almost 130,000 children in the UK living in homes where domestic abuse is happening, and a majority of those aren't known to services either. So when we do a young persons programme, we do that with boys and girls. We feel it's important for everybody to be able to challenge the stereotypes, to challenge the core beliefs that can sometimes motivate and drive abusive behaviour. So we look at the ingredients of healthy relationships, so things like respect, communication, equality, compromise, all the things that we would base a relationship on, whether it was an intimate partner or whether it's somebody in a friendship group or in a family member. So trust, commitment, honesty. We look at those things and what they mean to you and how you can base the foundations of a relationship on. There are a couple of other things that are really, really important when we're looking at healthy relationships, is feeling safe. So the fact that within that relationship you are able to feel safe, that you do feel that you are able to be you and to make choices for yourself and be an individual within that relationship. One of the healthy ingredients that we tend to look at in a separate area, a separate light, is the whole world. When we ask young people and even sometimes our adults within some of our empowerment programs, what are the ingredients that make up a healthy relationship, love will often come into it. We tend to put that into a separate category when we're looking at things, because love is driven a lot by emotion. It means different things to different people, and whilst we have unconditional love from our parents, for our children, for various people, actually with love comes often a lot of confusion as to whether it's something that's reciprocated, whether it's something that actually is a positive thing and negative, whether it's nurturing, or sometimes in the addictive side, which the addictive part is what we look at when we do a lot of our outreach, that line that crosses from being nurturing and supportive to being controlling, feeling that you can't breathe, that you're suffocated because somebody else is telling you what to do in the early stages, but actually which develops into something that actually somebody's following you wherever you go, making sure that you check in with them. You can't have friends because unless they've chosen them, you can't wear certain things because actually it's not appropriate or they don't like it. There's a lot of jealousy and a lot of passive aggressive sometimes behavior that goes on in these relationships. It's repeated patterns, and there's a huge impact to any of this. Anything that's designed to intimidate, frighten or scare somebody is seen as a controlling aspect, and the physical impact of being in such a relationship, along with the feelings of fear and being unsafe and the possibility of being hurt physically or bruised. Actually, there's a much wider scale in the emotional kind of impact, and how this impacts as a person, how this impacts your everyday life. To start with, it can just be feelings of confusion as to how somebody that loves you so much can hurt you so much, whether you're going crazy, whether you're remembering events right, because actually you're unsure of what's right and what's not. We talk about it being a cycle, because what usually starts off as a very happy honeymoon stage suddenly becomes a little bit niggly, and where things are, where you usually show your true colours, and actually those true colours for some people are not what you expect, and then by that time people are frightened to make a move to get out. The impact of living in environments or being in relationships that are abusive, regardless of whether they're physical or emotional or manipulating, is significant, especially on your day-to-day mood. We get a lot of reports of anxiety-based issues, which in turn impact on self-esteem, self-confidence, and feeling isolated. And sometimes an abusive person can do that for you. They can choose your friends. They can tell you not to have, not to go around to your family, not to have this phone call, not to speak to mum because she's, she's interfering, she doesn't like me, and use all these kind of ways of making you feel that actually the two of you are a team, but what's happening is that they're isolating you from everybody around you. It can knock your confidence, it can impact on your life, and in various ways. Growing up in such an environment, children often, they're products of their own environment. They soak up information like a sponge. They mirror us. They they know exactly, as parents, you know, they watch you, and you'll see children who will often take on and copy mum or dad, and the lack of having a positive role model does really impact on some of these children, unbeknown that, you know, what actually a healthy relationship is. You know, to them it's normal family life. So with the arguments and everything else that's in the relationship, you know, there's always the fear and the worry about becoming caught in the crossfire and becoming, you know, hurt through it. But there's also a lot of confusion. You know, this is mum, this is dad. Sometimes they will withdraw. They'll feel that actually that it's something that they're frightened of. They often feel to blame and guilty. They think it's something that they've done that is not a happy family home, and they might even regress to earlier stages. So for example, for the really tiny children who are, you know, maybe potty trained and attending nursery, might suddenly wake in the night and wet the bed and things like that. There's definite physical reactions, and some of this happens right from pregnancy. So we do get research has gone into the fact being is actually the effects of domestic abuse can, you know, impact on the tiniest of unborn children, and that continues throughout life. With our role in the community, as I say, we are a charity. We're all funded by various organisations, some like the Big Lottery Fund. We have child support workers who work from our refuge and sometimes from our outreach centre. They are provided by Children in Need, so we've got 3 years funding, which has just started again for them to provide support to the children who not only live in refuge, but for those who attend the centre. We have various groups running, so it doesn't matter what age you are. There's always something that's there that you can tap into. Unfortunately, with COVID, things have been very tricky. We've maintained running a lot of video calls. Freedom Programme and other such empowerment programs are actually run via Zoom, which in some ways doesn't have the same feel to it as what it would had we have had people face to face within a room. Having said that, we are actually reaching more people because we're allowed to have more people on the media platform, but also those that probably wouldn't walk through the door are joining us for virtual events. One of our main tasks within the outreach centre is I have a team of outreach support workers who safety plan and support plans with people who are living in the community, some who will be living in abusive relationships, others will have left. We have an increase recently in the last probably 12 to 18 months of young women coming through who potentially are in early stages of relationships, have children of their own and need support in not only with parenting, but also in dealing with the day-to-day relationship that they're in. So we do a lot of safety planning, we do a lot of support planning, we revisit, we review, and we try to make it something that actually helps and supports and joins everybody together. We do a lot of puzzle piecing, so we'll speak to various different agencies as we go. So if you've got a social worker, or if you've got a mental health worker, or you go to school or college, we will be in contact with them with your permission in order to pull it all together to make sure you're getting the support you need, because we understand that actually domestic abuse sometimes is only part of the problem, and what we want to do is be able to offer people support for everything. So we know that domestic abuse can impact on our mental health and our anxiety. It can make us feel like we don't want to go out. It can knock our confidence. So for example, somebody then embarking on a college course can feel quite anxious and in anticipating that and going along and undertaking what every other teenager, young person would be able to do quite easily. So we try and work with them to support that. We'll try and make things easier and put communications in the right people in the right places. Doesn't always work, it doesn't always run as smoothly, but it's important to us actually we look at the whole person, the whole situation. As I said, we run a lot of programs for all ages. We have we have a virtual coffee morning running at the moment, but we also have a few face-to-face clients who are coming in a pre-invited small group. So that's usually run as a drop-in, so that can be only ages. It's a little bit creative. There's usually tea, cake and biscuits and things like that. We run a survivors of domestic abuse group, which is a little bit more self-empowerment. It's about rebuilding. It's about coming through the other side. We'll do things. We get agencies in to come and help write CVs. We do creative classes where they'll come in, and we worked with a theatre company in the last couple of years, and there was a survivor stories play and little excerpts put on stage which were actually written by ladies within the refuge over the last 5 years. So it was quite empowering to sit and listen to watch their stories. We run a helpline which is 9:30 till 5 every day, Monday to Friday. That can be for whatever anybody feels they need. Somebody who would like advice about themselves, somebody who'd like advice about a friend. We answer the phone to professionals. Everybody that picks up the phone works within the charity. We're a very small team, so you'll find it doesn't matter where you are, the phone's ringing, somebody will pick it up. And if we can't answer it ourselves, we'll divert it to the right person. And as I say, we've got various different members of staff for different roles. We have currently 3 outreach workers who work on a part-time basis. So they work from our community centre, our resources centre on St Andrew Street North. So you may well, if you've been in and around Bury, walking down St Andrew Street from the bus station towards the train station, you might have seen a white building with purple butterflies on. So that's our community centre. So that's where all our programmes and all our services run from. We do have a refuge, as I said, which caters for up to 23 individuals, 8 families, and those are the most high risk. Majority of them will have come across the country. We don't tend to take people into refuge that live locally through fear of being found and tracked. So yes, we house women generally from all over the country. We're full, we're always full. If we have a room available, then we could allocate it 10, 15 times over. So it is left to us to put in place the most high risk victim and then look for something for the other people that may have been considered. So within that refuge, as I said, we have 2 childcare workers who split themselves across between the 2 centres, and we have refuge support workers and we have resettlement. So because it's really important that refuge is just a temporary accommodation. It's not permanent, so it's somewhere where people come from fleeing, they get help and support, it's put into place, and then they move on into the community. And they can, by law, they can travel wherever they'd like to be rehoused. Majority of them do stay quite local, and they're then entitled to further support under our resettlement umbrella, but also they come back in and out for outreach in some of our groups. So we have quite a little community which keep together we've got a Facebook page, we've just recently started Instagram and Twitter, so things are up and running now more for our virtual platforms. So we are getting the message out there and raising awareness in various different methods. We in the next few weeks are going to be looking at raising awareness, including the White Ribbon campaign, which happens this time every year, so against violence against women and girls, and they've included obviously boys and others in that now as well. So I think it's important that we keep up with the times and we keep moving, and that we continue to push forward with some of our preventative work, hence these kind of platforms. For younger people, we run Escape the Trap, which is an 8-week program run by our dedicated teen worker, who she only works part-time at the moment. We're looking into funding to make this something that we can do on a permanent basis, because we feel the need of coming out to do things like healthy relationship drop-ins in colleges, community, attach ourselves to youth groups, but to get into schools and do some really good quality work under their healthy relationships PHSE sessions, and that can take form in various ways. The Escape the Trap program is something that you can do for 8 weeks. But for needs, we do have one-to-one sessions, and we do have small group work. So we can kind of meet the needs of for people who'd rather not be in big groups. We can meet the needs for those who like to be in a small group, or want face-to-face via email, face-to-face on video call. So we offer a safe place to talk, a safe place to ask questions, to explore what's happening. And we can then work with whoever it is that comes through the door to put things in place to help them keep safe, to reintroduce them back into and to rebuild into some kind of normal life. We obviously know that domestic abuse in the past, probably in the past couple of years, has been quite in the headlines quite a bit. There has been a domestic bill trying to be passed through government. For anybody who's interested, there is a great speaker she's a member of Parliament who spoke in the House of Commons. I don't think it might have been late last year. She spoke about her own personal experience of domestic abuse and how that made her feel, and it's a really good, powerful watch. For those of you that like soaps, Coronation Street's been running for quite some time now, a very good gaslighting story, so demonstrating how these things, we don't see them, we don't read the cues, and suddenly we end up in a situation which we can't get out. And sometimes we don't even notice we're in that. It's other people that kind of point that out to us. So it's all important, even if it's not you that's in the position, that actually you can recognise it for somebody else and keep chipping away and keep asking the questions. EastEnders also have run another abusive storyline, which unfortunately ended up in death, and that's still playing out, with him still having the children at home, and how that's going to end, I'm not quite sure. But all have been a very good, they've worked with Women's Aid nationally in order to be able to portray these stories in what happens in everyday life. It's the statistics for a while now have been, there's an incident that happens every 6 seconds that the police are called to. So whilst we don't ever think that it's us or it's the person next door, actually it's 1 in 4 women experience domestic abuse. They can have up to 50 incidents that have taken place before they even report it, and that might only be to a friend. So it happens a lot more than we take notice of. If you're worried about somebody or yourself, or you feel that you'd like to know more, then obviously we encourage you to speak to somebody, your tutor, friends, parents, anybody that you feel that you can actually communicate with. We have a lot of women who come through the doors that say, if only somebody had asked, if only somebody had believed me. I felt stupid, I didn't want to say anything, but she kept asking the question. Those are the ones that actually then eventually turn around and say, actually things aren't as good as what, I need help. And that's where we want to be. We want to give people a voice, and by doing these things, we feel that it's a bit of a whistle-stop tour. It's a very short insight into what we do and how we work. But actually, it's so important to get the message out there and to raise awareness for those people that do need help and support, those people who have been in lockdown in COVID, that are drawn because they have nowhere else to go, are living with perpetrators, and everybody's back in the home environment. Those children who are living in those kind of houses that are not known to services, that didn't get a vulnerable school children key worker place, that are living in those houses throughout those 6 months, that actually rely on school to be their safe place and somewhere where they can be who they are. So it's really important that we get the message out, and that where to come if there's anything you need. If anybody would like to know more, obviously I'm happy to be contacted. Any of us will answer any questions, that's absolutely fine. Women's Aid have a national website which is really good and really informative. All websites in relation to domestic abuse have a hide now button, which if you press it, it takes it right down and takes it out of your history, so nobody can track that. They also have a junior part to that, so for young people, so the hideout. which kind of explains more on teenage relationships and young people, and you'll be able to find several links in there, and they also got a lot of survivor stories in there too. And most recently, in the last year, they introduced a chat service, which means that you don't even have to pick up the phone. You can text and get a response, and there'll be an advisor at the end of the phone who can support you. A lot of the stuff, if you go national, they will divert it back to us in Bury, but the important thing is that you've made contact, you've had that discussion, and even if it's just to put in a verbal safety plan, something that you feel comfortable with. I've designed a safety plan that I have here if anybody would like a copy, which is basically just talks through what you should do in an emergency, or have something, you know, in a bag so that you could give it to somebody else if you're worried about somebody else. But yes, if anybody would like to know any more, then please do contact me, do give me a shout, and I'm happy to answer anything in a bit more detail.
Perfect. Thank you, Rachel. That's really insightful. If you'd like, I can't see any questions to answer at the moment. So if you could either ping some information over to Mike, then we can sort of ping it out to the students, and they've got access to all of the resources that you guys and all the correct contact information, etc. And then that's probably about everything from us. Thank you ever so much for joining us.
No problem. I will I'll put something into place, and then I'll email Mike the details. But as I say, we've got a helpline landline number which you can Google. If anybody needs any help or support, or even a what if conversation, then just give us a shout.
Perfect. Brilliant. Thank you ever so much.
Thank you.
Take care.
Bye bye.